Hello and welcome to another video. So it's been a little while since I've made a video, mainly due to medical reasons. Unfortunately, I haven't been able to avoid that, but hopefully we'll be coming back strong with some daily content. At least that's the plan, but if anything does go right and a video isn't released, just keep in mind that it's been fairly hectic and been pretty difficult. So as far as things go so far, the current meta hasn't shifted too much even post Nerf. As you can see, we're going to be taking a look at a Haven deck, which is a Tenko variant deck, which is still doing exceptionally well in the meta, and I would highly recommend still playing it as it is quite good. Of course, a few things have changed, mostly just small tweaks like the Heavenly Knights and Godsworn are being a little more used, which is good, especially since I do have an animated one of that, which is quite nice. But outside of that, everything else is pretty normal. They are aiming for the Summit Temple with at least a condition. I mean, it's one-of, so it's a one-off kind of thing to go for these Heavenly Knights and big damage bursts, but it does work exceptionally well. I so far haven't lost a game with this deck. It's done really well for me. It is one of the top, I believe, JCG decks at the moment. JCG was done fairly well anyway. It's definitely a solid deck, so we're going to get right into it and take a look. So the first matchup is against Haven. It's a semi-mirror match. I mean, Haven decks have a few different tweaks between them, so it's not surprising that they're a little bit different here and there. I find that keeping these 6-drop tends to be a fairly decent option, and when I'm looking for other early game cards, I do tend to drop Priestess, especially in the Haven on Haven matchup. We will also be taking a look at some of the pre-builds over the next week or so, probably over the next couple of weeks. I'll be intersplicing probably every second day a pre-built deck, maybe even double up days where we just have one come after the other, but we'll wait and see. I just want to give an opinion on each pre-built deck and see what you guys think of them. So overall, we start off pretty well. Summit Temple isn't a bad way to start. Some people would recommend not playing it right off the bat. Personally, this deck does pretty well with it when you play it straight out, especially because you do run so much healing, so your health total really isn't usually an issue. So to go for the White Fang Temple, that is going to garner us a heal. Of course, White Fang Temple is a very key card. It's definitely made the Tenko decks what they are.
This jewelry for you is
Jeweled Priestess, not surprising. I mean, they are running a very similar deck to what I am. Fortunately, we hit the Snow White, which is probably one of the, I wouldn't say worst things to hit, but it's definitely not the best. We do fortunately manage to get that Tenko, which means next turn we are going to be able to take advantage of it, and with a Black Diamond setup, we're actually going to get even more value. Jeweled Priestess, also really good when it comes to value. Being able to pull those cards does a good job for us. While I haven't been right up on the meta, I have looked at a lot of tier lists over the last week or so, and I've been playing a reasonable amount to try and get back into the swing of things a little bit, and I've definitely got to say this deck has been one of the better ones that I've played. I've also been playing an aggro sword deck that does exceptionally well, but we might take a look at that another day. So, Tenko Shrine is going to do great. We're going to get this heal, we're going to be able to ping something off. We are going to take a little bit of damage due to this Tin Soldier, but there is not a lot we could do there. So the worry here would have been the Evo. If they had have went for the Evo on the 1-2 there, I definitely would have been in some trouble. Of course, looks like they're the full Summit Temple build, so they're really pushing that. And turn 6 is actually really solid, as we are going to be able to use Gem Priestess. I also would do the preemptive Evo on it, just to protect us from any potentially big threats. But we are going to clear this board, thanks to Tenko, just fine. So we don't even need to attack with it. And we get a 6/6 Holy Dragon. Not bad. And there is Darkhind, not really an issue at this point. It does mean they're going to remove these and deal a little bit of damage, but we can pretty much immediately follow up with a pretty decent clearing options. So we do have our own Hind, which is going to do some great work. Combo that with the Blackened Scripture, and then we end up with the Turtle being extremely weak there, since Summit Temple is going to reduce its attack power now to 1. And that does lead to the concede, so our setup did exceptionally well, and that tends to be what Haven does best. One of the other really popular decks at the moment is Portal, so I'm really glad that I ended up with a really decent Portal matchup. Of course, Puppet Portal is definitely the one that people are aiming for now, although it is more of a hybrid deck still, although it does tend to lean towards Puppets more so. The Portal just has so many different variations. I personally prefer artifacts over Puppets, just because Puppets always feel clunky to me. They never seem to really have that value that I want, and typically when I play them I just really can't get the end game going, which is a little disappointing because it would be a really fun deck if I could get the hang of it. I think it's just got one of those learning curves that I haven't quite got the hang of. It's definitely something I want to spend some more time with. Start off pretty strong. Anything you can remove in the early game against Puppets is usually pretty beneficial. Since we do stack a fair bit of removal in this deck for the late game, I'm not too worried about using early game removal on these weaker things. And Red Hot Boots don't take advantage of the fanfare, but I mean, it's not really a problem. If I had have thought about it, I would have used that instead of using Scripture, but then we also denied draw with Scripture, so can't really go too wrong there. Plus I'm really freeing up some hand space for this white to go off, so that we definitely won't overstack our hand in the long run. Unfortunately, we don't draw much good to us. I mean, this white diamond's going to be pretty good, but outside of that, not much else is going to be a huge advantage. And they're pretty easy removal there. But, Lococo, little puppeteer, gonna hit this bear, not gonna be great. Although our removal isn't bad, especially with Gem Princess, sorry, I think Priestess because Haven, but it's Princess. Some pretty good value, especially with the heals. She's probably one of my favourite cards at the moment, just based on her effect. So they set up the nice substitution play, still stacking their puppets up, and a nice automation knight. Of course, we get a pretty nice ping there. That is going to let us trade evenly, even if it gives them a puppet. And a nice Tenko setup, so our healing is actually going to do fairly decently. Of course, Flower Doll, and another automation knight. They're definitely stacking up puppets now. Of course, this is pretty much immediately removable if we want to. I do end up picking the wrong choice here. I pick Darkhind. I was actually meant to pick Lighthind. Unfortunately, it just happened to be a misclick there. A little disappointing. We are still pretty much going to remove most of this. If we hit the automation, we definitely would remove it, which with the order of play there is actually guaranteed anyway. So it definitely wasn't the worst possibility. It was just a little disappointing. Fortunately, it wouldn't have really changed things because that puppet would have transformed either of the hinds, so like I said, really didn't end up making a big difference, and we didn't stuff up this one. Although now I consider it, Darkhind may have been better. But we get the double ping now to face, so really weighing it up, I think the light was definitely the way to go. But there is the Vengeful Puppeteer. It is going to deal some pretty strict damage, honestly. They've got a really nice burst here, which is going to be pretty devastating. And using the Vengeful, they are going to be able to kill the 3/5. Fortunately, they are right in range for me just to clear this out. So their only real win condition now would be to have a second Orcus. Like, Orcus would be the only way to go for it. Especially since I am stacking my heals now with White Fang Temple. And we're going to have a pretty decent draw next turn. Plus, we also have Heavenly Knight, which could secure us the game, potentially. So there's their board, they're going big again. And a couple of nice draws. So, using another Beacon of Salvation, we are going to be able to clear this off. And get a couple of damage to face, plus the double heal. I don't think it would have been possible to actually go for lethal that turn. We still would have been just off, I think. but leaving them at 2 health is pretty much perfect. So there's Nicholas.
The battlefield belongs to humanity.
You are getting eliminated.
Fortunately, not really an issue. We can remove that ward with the black inscription there, with the 2-3 being rammed, plus a Heavenly Knight for lethal.
Another of God's trials.
Worst case, we actually could have dragged this out even further, but getting the win condition here is just fine.
I feel so alive.
So as I mentioned at the start of the video, this deck does exceptionally well, and I would highly recommend it for anyone who's interested in playing Haven or looking for a reasonable top deck. I mean, it is running a lot of legendaries, as Haven always does. You really can't swap out any of the legendaries here. They are pretty much all key. You may get away with 2 Heavenly Knights and adding one of another card, but honestly, I wouldn't change a single card in this deck, as its value is just insane. Especially things like Snow White. A lot of people ask, what can I sub Snow White out for? And honestly, you just can't. Its evolve effect and its trade value is just way too high. It just doesn't have anything that can really contend with it. Basically the same for all the other cards. I mean, Beacon of Salvation as a 2 of, really good board clear, especially since it's a 7 and then 8, so you can follow up immediate board clears. And the healing effect combos nicely. Hind, as again, great healing effect. Also Dark works really nicely. And then of course the other top deck cards. You can't have a deck now without Gem Princess with Tenko, and Godsworn is probably the only card you might get away with not using, but if you do end up in Dragon matchups and things like that, this card is invaluable. You really can't fault it. So if you did enjoy this video, hit the like button and subscribe. We'll have a pre-built video on Forest tomorrow, so do check that out, and I hope you guys enjoyed the video. See ya.